This is Will Nunziata, New York City-based director and creator of theater, television, and film. And today I am thrilled to be speaking with the acclaimed singer, pianist, guitarist, I would just say a Renaissance man of an artist, the one and only Jon Nickol. But before we get to our interview, here is a sneak peek at Jon's incredible talent.
No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. Can you help me out with the chorus, please? So, darling, hey! Oh, stand by me. Won't you stand by me, stand by me. So, darling, won't you stand by me.
Well, hello, Jon. How are you?
I'm really, really great and very, very honored to be talking to you today.
Oh my God, Jon, are you kidding me? I was telling you off camera, I absolutely remember who exactly you are. You are not only traveling, your great country, but also you are the resident musician in the American Bar at the Savoy Hotel. This is no normal bar or hotel, ladies and gentlemen. For all of our viewers watching, we have great savvy audience members here on this show, but I want you to talk a little bit about, Jon, first and foremost, the history of the Savoy in London and how many years you've been performing there and what it's like for you to perform night after night in front of such intimate audiences.
Yeah, well, I've been performing in the American Bar in the Savoy Hotel for 17 years, 17, not 70, but 17.
Wait, were you like 2 years old?
I appreciate that. No, I was 65.
But
no,
I was
in my early 20s. And I can genuinely say that I learnt, saying I learnt the craft sounds a bit pompous, but I learnt the job in that bar because I was really not used to playing in a formal environment like that at that age. But as you say, playing night in, day out, kind of 5 nights a week for all those years, that bar and that environment has really shaped me. So I did kind of cut my teeth playing in that bar. It's an amazing place to play. Anyone who doesn't know the bar, and I know you do, Will, because I've met you in it. The American Bar is, although it's attached to a 5-star, very posh hotel, it's a very intimate, very friendly, very kind of arty environment, really. And the piano is right in the middle of the room, as opposed to some kind of lobbies and hotels where the piano is kind of in the corner and you're kind of, somehow removed. In the American Bar, you're right in the heart of the action. And that's really, really important. So, it's a very formal place, if you know what I mean. And to give you a brief history of the hotel, well, it dates back to the 1890s, and the American Bar kind of came about because of prohibition, really, in your country, and lots of American tourists were gasping for a drink. Frankly, they were dying for booze, which I'm sure you and I can relate to too. And so kind of mixology and cocktails, kind of really, some major cocktails were invented in that actual space that I'm sitting and playing in every night, even now. And so it's a very historic room. All the greats and the goods have been there. And again, back to your world, Will, I mean, its links with the kind of West End and Broadway are very, very close because, of course, the Savoy Theatre is right next door to the hotel. You're right in the heart of the West End there. So you never quite know who's going to walk through those doors or come down those steps. And I learned that lesson very, very early on because especially it's always on those very quiet, rainy Tuesday nights when you're feeling slightly kind of, run-of-the-mill and pedestrian, that somebody will come and tap you on the shoulder. It'll be somebody, you might not recognize them, but somebody who's really extraordinary. And so you always feel, to a certain extent, that you've got to kind of keep your game up a bit.
Well, Jon, I want to first say what an amazing place to cut your teeth. I mean, come on now. You are in one of the preeminent, not only venues, but epicenters of culture and art in the world. I want to first say, I think it just takes a certain amount of craft, focus, and skill set to be able to handle a room like you do at the American Bar at the Savoy with what the audience saw you, a little clip of you at Carfest, 30,000 people. The fact that you have the ability to treat an audience as if you were singing to one person. That takes not only a large amount of craft, but a large amount of love in what you do. Is that something, John, that you're consciously focusing on in terms of, when you're playing to whatever size crowd, that it's always going to be those same life or death stakes?
Well, when I was a kid, I used to play guitar or keyboard in my bedroom, and I would pretend, I used to kind of project and sing out the window and imagine that far away beyond the perimeter of my garden, there was an audience. But that's just what I used to do. And strange enough, that festival gig, the Carfest gig that you put a link of, put a clip up earlier, that gig came about because the guy who organized that festival was in the American bar one night.
I was about to say, like, have you gotten gigs? Literally, my next question, in addition to Carfest, what other fun gigs or even people that you've met that have led to other gigs because you committed in almost rainy Tuesday nights and performed as if your life depended on it, just because you love it?
Well, I mean, in the last 17 years, all of my kind of personal highlights professionally have come from being in that space. And I really need to remind myself about that, because obviously I played there for a very long time. And yet you look back over, you can't get blasé about it. Because I look back and I've had private gigs on the Orient Express. I've met Paul McCartney. I've jammed with Amy Winehouse. I've had champagne with Burt Bacharach. I mean, all the highlights have come from that space, and I do forget that sometimes. I really do, but I have to remind myself. You look back over your diary and think, no, it's all about that being in that space, and that's what's really unique about it. And I don't take it for granted. But back to your question about committing, and I think for many performers, I think especially if you're playing really, really regularly, 2, 3, 4 times a week, and I have lots of friends who are in the West End and Broadway. I think it always needs to matter, and you always you take it seriously, and there has to be that little bit of adrenaline rush, whether you're just trying to impress the person behind the bar, or you're slightly concerned that the new manager who started working in the hotel or theatre might come down that night. You've always got to care about it a little bit, and that, I think that shows.
Sorry, I'm gonna push that together in edit. My computer was being a little wonky. Just give me 1 second so that I can just make a note. Okay, 3, 2. John, that's incredible. And I love the fact that you remain in this place of gratitude with what sometimes may seem, like you had said, a pedestrian moment of same thing, same old. But I feel like the moment that even hits you, you're able to get yourself out of it because of your love and gratitude of being able to do what you love for a living, literally and figuratively being the epicenter of art and culture. It's so interesting. I mean, when I speak about London, I mean, I'm in love with the city. I can't wait to get back there. And when I'm there next, I will let you know, John. And
please.
But everyone's I live in the heart of Manhattan, and everyone's like, oh, but you live in, we sometimes, I think we can both relate. We both sometimes forget where we live. Grass is always greener. I'd much rather sometimes be in London than here, maybe vice versa for you. But John, I want to know though, for someone who's such an optimist like yourself, I'm curious if you could give advice to any of the artists out there, whether they be in the UK, in New York, in London, in Singapore, China, Australia. I've spoken with a lot of artists that are struggling, also with their mental state, in keeping with it. What advice would you give to an artist who may be having just a little bit of a tougher time keeping that spark ignited, that creative spark ignited?
Well, I think you nailed what I'm about to say perfectly by saying the spark. And I think I forget which business book it was or which business guru mentioned it, but there's an old adage that you worry about the things you can control and you don't worry about the things that you can't control. Now, during lockdown, like everybody, I had a tricky time because, like a lot of artists and musicians and actors and what have you, I'm pay as you go. If I'm not working, I'm not really earning very much money at all. And so, like a lot of people, the global pandemic was a very, very difficult time. But when you're faced with adversity, you've just got to peel it back, scale it back, and get back to the very spark that ignited you in the first place. What is it that turns me on? What is it? Why am I doing this? Why am I a musician? Well, you know, and go back to the source. And the rest kind of takes care of itself. I think as an artist and a musician, and again, all the other kind of creative types that you guys deal with and represent so beautifully, it's very, very easy to worry about the things you can't control and to agonize over the things that you can't control. But if you can, it's always, and none of us achieve this perfectly all the time. We all, you know, we all are guilty of fretting about that opportunity that hasn't come through yet, or that email that hasn't been responded to. But generally, if you take care of your art, and if you're having a slow week or a slow few months and not much is going on and no one's coming back to you, you scale it back and just concentrate, learn a new song, learn a new script, you know, learn, concentrate on your fitness a bit, whatever it might be. You concentrate on yourself, turn inward. And it's strange how things seem to follow, and that seems to magnetize your fortune. Maybe it's just because you stop agonizing and waiting for things so intensely, and things just seem to kickstart a bit. That's a technique I try to employ.
Amazing, John, and what great advice. I mean, listen, before I say my final thing, I want to let the audience know, for more on the incredible Jon Nickol, you could read more about him right below this video. John, that whole idea of getting back to basics, I think there's something about all of us as humans, but especially artists. We're always looking for the next thing because we have to. And I think these past 2 years of being still, we've been forced to reacquaint ourselves with that inner child, dare I say, the place where the spark began. And I can sense the vibe from you, even through the Zoom screen, that inner child remains alive and well in you. I happen to say, he remains alive and well in me, but it does take work day in and day out. And I guess my final question for you, John, what are you most optimistic about as we head into 2022? Can we continue? And I haven't even asked you off camera. Are you back at the American Bar? Do you have original songs that you're working on? I know that you've also done film and TV. Is that something that you want to get going again as well? I want to just know, I guess, on a creative front, what you're most optimistic about in 2022.
Well, looking forward to seeing you again, Will. It's definitely high on the list. I one thing during lockdown, I really got into broadcasting. So I have a podcast now, and I do a little bit of a radio show. So that's something that really, you know, again, turning adversity into positive. That was something I really, really enjoyed doing. That didn't exist before the pandemic. So I'm really looking forward to exploring the kind of broadcasting side of my career a bit. The American Bar currently isn't open, but I am performing in the Savoy Hotel 4 nights a week in another room. Hopefully the American Bar will be open in the next month or so. So that's great. I'm really looking forward to getting some international travel, you know, some events around the globe again, because I've really missed that. And yeah, I'm songwriting. I'm busy working on music, and I'm looking forward to. Oh, one thing I must tell you about. Back to looking after your kind of mental health during kind of slower periods. I've got really obsessed with firing out 1 or 2 emails a day. You know, whether you save a kind of template so you don't even have to do much work, you just ping it out. There are so many radio stations, so many TV companies, so many film companies, so many music agencies, blah, 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 blah. And it's so good for my mental health. I'm sitting on a train on my way to a gig, and I send out 1 or 2 emails a day. So when I'm feeling slightly morose or slightly down, and it's been a quiet gig and I'm having my coffee in my break, I think, well, I've sent out 2 emails a day, and one of those might come back to me. And that really makes me feel, it really improves my morale. So I would really recommend doing that. So that's been a good thing that I've started doing.
I love that habitual positive action that we can be taking as humans and artists, just to keep the ball and the juices flowing. I think that's such a great advice. Well, listen, John, I could speak with you all day. When my husband and I make it over to is it over to the pond or over the pond? Over the pond, right?
Over the pond, yeah.
Okay. I'm so excited to be able to reacquaint with you. And John, you're an incredible talent, incredible human. I'm so excited that you're joining and coming on board this incredible new social media app. But selfishly, I'm happy that we're reacquainted, John. And thank you so much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Take care.